Alright, good morning. Alright, just checking everything's in order. Looks good. So, this morning we're going to be looking at Toast notifications, what they are, and effectively how to use, or how to show them in PowerShell, and basically we'll be skipping straight to my module BurntToast and how to use it and how to show toasts using it. I guess a good place to start is, what is a toast notification? Yeah, yes, coffee this morning. So this is probably the best definition of a toast I've found so far. Basically, the key thing being it's an unobtrusive element that pops up on your screen. You'll see a lot of them on cell phones. You're seeing more and more of them on PCs. There's an example in that screenshot there of one on a Mac. It's the sort of thing that would pop up if Windows had updates available for you before it started getting to the point where it was putting a full screen banner across and forcing you to do a reboot. I considered setting up some sort of an example to show a Windows one naturally, but we're going to be seeing a lot of them soon anyway, so we'll skip that part. Another time you'll see them a lot is if you've got Outlook or another email app, it'll often show you a toast notification when you've got a new email coming. So, we don't need that anymore. So, as a quick primer for how Windows does their toast notifications, effectively the notification itself is just XML, and I'll show the XML soon. Basically, I'll use BurntToast to generate it so that I don't muck up any of the formatting. But you're taking an XML document, you're passing it through some Windows APIs, and Windows is displaying it to the end user. All nice and neat. So I set up a virtual machine here with an older version of Windows on it, this being 1607, just to show off how some things have changed in the latest updates. Because you'll find every Windows update now, the UI, or the UX rather, for toast notifications are changing, and also the features and what you can and can't do with them is changing. So, to get started, I've already got BurntToast installed on this machine. I hope. Cool. So just to show it the very basic, so in the simplest sense, when this view got a title effectively, although in reality that's just your first string in your XML, your first so, if we do another one with a couple of lines of text on it, as you can see, we had 3 lines of text there. The first one got slightly bold, given that it's our header. And if we let that disappear, you see it's been added to the list and they're all grouped under that burnt toast. Now, on this version of Windows, it was possible to make that app ID anything you wanted it. Now this is going to warn me that it's not in the registry, but it has worked, it's showing up here. But what we'll find when it dismisses in a second or two is that number there will go back to nothing and it's not showing in there. So on this version, the warning message is showing use new BT app ID. So let's do what the thing says. And now you can see it's in the Action Center. So what that new BT app ID was doing is it's basically putting an entry into the registry, which then gets, if I can remember where it is, it makes it show up in here. So if we go on there, there's all sorts of things you can tweak for it, but basically new BT app ID just got it in here and turned on show notifications. So that was in the older version of Windows. Now on this machine I don't have it installed, so we'll go through that process. Luckily it's on the gallery, so it's nice and easy. Install module. Oh, and for clarity's sake, the version I'm running on this virtual machine is version 0.6.0. And that's because in 6.1 I removed this app ID from new burnt notification and we're about to go into Y. Although I guess I should probably install it on here to show Y. And then we'll update it. Cool. So this is going to be rather abrupt because it's going to show us the reason why it doesn't work very quickly. But we've installed version 0.6.0 and with that version the app ID for our toasts defaults to the string burnt toast. When we run this, we get the same warning saying it doesn't exist in the registry. But if you remember our virtual machine, we got that warning, it still displayed the toast. Now it displays the warning, it doesn't display the toast. So naturally you think, alright, I'll go ahead and register it. Now I don't get the warning, and I also don't get a toast notification. So what's happening there is, in the older version of Windows I was using something of a loophole. Microsoft's guidance has always been that in order to run or in order to generate a toast notification from a desktop app, that desktop app needs to have an icon in the start menu with an embedded app ID. So I happened across the fact that I didn't actually need that. However, one thing you'll note is these notifications are grayed out. That's not how they're meant to look. That was basically the first hint that things weren't working quite the way they were meant to. So, start apps. No, I completely forget the basics of PowerShell here. Start apps. So basically, if I were to pick on, say, Xbox, sure. So this listing here, get start apps, is everything on my start menu, its name and the app ID. So I'm going to pick on Xbox, grab its app ID, yeah, maybe not that one. What's one that I know works? Maps. Oh, actually, having that on quiet hours might not help. Oh. Obviously that caffeine didn't help. So now you see it's coming through from maps, which was the name attached to that app ID. And you'll note it's actually quite bright in there now. And that's how it was meant to look. So if we go back to here and do the same thing, this time let's try Xbox again, because I'm sure my problem just then was the fact that I just completely mucked it up. Right, so notice this Xbox one is quite a bit brighter, both in the picture and that heading, than my previous ones. And that's because this is using a real app ID, whereas these aren't. And just before we go any further, also notice the new UX is there's a gap here between the edge of the screen and the toast, and that X has been changed to a arrow pointing back to where the toast came from, and the tooltip there is also saying move it to the action center. So now it's doing what you would actually expect it to. So I guess the fundamental question, and understanding why I worked on the BurntToast module, is what are they good for? For me personally, I use them whenever I've got a long running script. So if I've got something I know is going to take anything longer than a couple of minutes, that I'm not going to want to sit there and you know, I want to know when the script is finished, but I don't want to sit there with the console open on my screen and actively watching it. I'll put at the bottom of that script to go and fire off a BurntToast notification, so that in Windows I'll see it either pop up live at the time, or when I get back it'll be in my notifications in the Action Center. I also have used it for some rudimentary alerting. So like I'll have a PowerShell job running that's checking for a certain condition, and if it's met, it will show me a notification. Things like if the ping round time to something is higher than normal, or if my trace route has changed. So for example, at work, that would mean that we've failed over to a backup internet link. Lots of things like that. You can use it if you can use it with PowerShell remoting to send notifications from a server back to your workstation. Yeah, lots of little use cases for it. It was handy for me at the time for something I was working on, so built the thing, released it, and apparently people have really taken to it, so that's awesome. But as far as now, let's go ahead and update the module. And we'll go and have a look at moving away from just using this new BurntToast notification function, because there's actually a bunch of functions built into this module. And we'll look at the XML behind everything. On the topic of functions, that's what's in there. So basically, behind this, well, I wanted to make getting off the ground with these notifications really simple. So this you can consider the standard or the basic function. You run that, you're going to get a toast notification. Through that, oh, shouldn't have updated help, because that's not going to pull anything from the internet. Through that, I've exposed the basic stuff that you would need. Excuse me. The basic stuff you would need when creating a toast. So you've got your text, you can specify sound, headers, you can get progress bars in there, give it a unique identifier, which is part of that, and we'll go into that later. You can make them silent, you can specify them as snooze and dismiss. So to look at a couple of those, right, first thing you'll note with the updated version on the latest version of Windows 10 is it actually worked, and you'll note that it's coming from Windows PowerShell. But it's still grayed out, which is a bit of a pain. So what I did in the latest version is, because it had to be a valid app ID now, I've set the default to PowerShell, and I've removed the app ID from the basic function, keeping in mind that I wanted to keep the basic function as user-friendly as possible. I didn't want to expose anything through it that would trip the end user up and give them a non-working toast. But let's look at sound. We've got a predefined list, so we can go with something like mail. Sounds a lot like Outlook. We've got various alarms. We can do things like snooze and dismiss, which, I forget, isn't working anymore in this version of Windows. If we go back to here, in the older versions of Windows, you would get a drop down with some times in it, which for some reason for me has always defaulted to 9 minutes, even though there's a 5 minutes and a 10 minutes. If you click snooze, the toast disappears, it comes back in X minutes. If you click dismiss, it's gone. So that's enough of the basic functions for now. In fact, let's clear that and blow this up a little bit, because we're going to be working in here a little bit more today. So, if you don't want to use the basic function, or you want to be able to do things like have clickable buttons or be able to click the toast itself, then we need to jump into using the other functions included. So we'll work through this. Actually, let's make proper use of VS Code and actually do it in here. Let's just chuck this on the desktop so it is out of the way. There. So, the various elements we're going to need. We'll need some text. Text, not test. And once you know them, the functions are fairly descriptively named. We need text. We create new BT text, and I'll be verbose with it. One thing I didn't show before, and I need to stop typing that way, is you can create just an empty text element, and that'll give you the result of basically a blank line. Quotes, and I consistently wrote test instead of text, which is awesome. We can also have images, which new BT image. Our source is, let's have a look. What have we got in there? Sure, let's use that. And to make things look cool, we'll make that a hero image. Then we can specify our audio. And here you can see that we have the same list, but unfortunately, well, maybe not unfortunately, but it does use the fully qualified name compared to what we were getting in the simplified the new BurntToast notification function, where we just saw default IM, SMS. Now we're seeing everything, like the full path to it. So all those alarms, they're looping sounds, so you can see looping there. So we'll pick something nice and short. You don't actually have to wrap it in quotes, I just do it here to change the color, make it easier to see. So we've got all these various elements now. We need to start bundling them up. So the naming of some of these next parts might seem a bit, let's call it arbitrary, but once we see the XML, it'll make a little bit more sense. So we wrap all of what we've just created up into a binding. And our children for this. And again, the XML might help with why we're naming things the way we're naming things. Let's chuck our various text elements in, texter elements in there. And our hero image. Which was, although I don't like it being called that, let's change it to image 1. Now you'll note I haven't included the audio in here, that's because we add it later. So now we need a visual element, which is literally just, for the time being, our binding that we created. There is other stuff in here. The add image query, the base URL, the language. None of that stuff's been useful for me, but it's a valid inclusion in the XML, so I've left it there just in case it's ever needed by anyone. And now we need our content. And again, this one is our visual element. And also the audio that we specified earlier. Now if we run all of this, get no errors, so that means I haven't mistyped anything. Now to display it, we need to submit our notification. So, here's our hero image that we specified. Windows did an awesome job of cropping that for me. If you heard it, that was the SMS sound, the default SMS sound from Microsoft. And we've got the various elements that we asked for. We've got our header. This is a header. It doesn't actually show the blank line there. Now that might be because it did get quite long. But I also think now it's not possible to have a blank line under the header, unfortunately. And as you can see, it's running as PowerShell. We can't see that because this toast got a bit long, but we've got the app ID there. If we dismiss that, you can see the hero image showing up in here as well. And it's under the PowerShell banner, which is all cool. So this here is our XML. What I might do actually to make this look a bit nicer is it possible? There it is. Is it possible to format? No, it's not. Let's do this manually. Alright, so behind the scenes, this is the XML that was passed up into the Windows APIs. So if you did want to, you could literally construct your own XML document and pass that through. I forget the commands these days to do that, although I've probably got some really old code sitting in the GitHub repo or You could pull apart the submit BT notification, or whatever it was called. Yeah, submit BT notification. The actual code for showing notifications will be in that function. But what you'll find is if any part of this is malformed, let's give it a... I believe what happens if your XML is malformed, you will get a toast notification show up, but it'll be basically the most generic of notifications. It literally has no content. It has a placeholder title, I believe. Yeah, it's basically completely useless. You can tell a toast was sent, but that's about it. So I want to play with this a bit because I want to actually see that blank line. Also don't want that to be a hero image anymore. We're just going to specify it as an image here and see what happens. Alright. Did I hit... Evidently I hit debug anyway. Sorry, I got distracted by that coming up. Right, let's give that another go. So, as you can see now, it's still not showing our blank line, which means something's changed between the old versions of Windows and the new version of Windows, so that's probably something I need to file a bug about on my repo so I remember to look at it. But now, instead of the image being massive and up the top as the hero image, it's now just in line with the text. You can see the whole image now instead of PowerShell, instead of Windows cropping sort of that top bit there. But you'll also note, because it's so long, we're not seeing the app ID anymore. So as a test, if we were to get rid of that, rid of that, rid of that, no, we don't see it at all anymore. That I hadn't noticed until now. Alright. Well, that makes losing the app ID a little bit less of a problem. Give me a sec while I open up OneNote, because I need to jot down these various things I'm noticing now, because they'll need to be looked at later. BurntToast somewhere. Ah. No blank lines. And what was that thing we just noticed then? No app ID. Cool. Oh, right. Let's grab one of our start apps. This is probably to do with what we found out at the start of the stream, which was we need a valid app ID. So if I grab one of those and add it to here, what happens? Nothing. Alright, let's go back to Old Faithful, which is maps. Oh, I missed the last. Always. No. So even on something with what's the word I'm looking for? With a valid app ID, the latest version of Windows, it's not showing the app ID label down there. So what I'm getting at there, we'll go back to my VM, is basically, if I get rid of snooze and dismiss, we don't need anything too fancy with this. On the older versions of Windows, it would show you down here the app that it was coming from. And now it's not. So that's interesting. It also means losing the ability to be quite as customizable with our app IDs isn't as big of an issue as it was. It's still a big issue, but yeah, it's easier to live with, I guess. But that raises an interesting point. If we put all of these back on, our image, so what I've done there is I've specified that this image is a quote-unquote app logo override, and it's also cropping as a circle now, but you'll see what that does in a second. And then I've provided it to app logo override on my binding. So when we run this now, this is getting weird. Oh, I see. Sorry. As I'm doing these demos, I'm learning things that have changed in the full creators update that I haven't noticed before. So now that I've changed the app logo, it's showing who generated the text, who the toast is coming from, which in this case is Windows PowerShell. I guess they think if the icon's the default icon, then you don't need to know the name of it, because frankly, if that was the PowerShell logo, you know it came from PowerShell. Interesting. Sorry, I'm being distracted from what I wanted to actually talk about, but there we go. So the next thing I want to look at is basically buttons or activating your toast messages, because it's one thing to show a notification on screen, but it's really good if you can have them be useful. So the first thing we'll look at is creating the actual ability to click your toast notification. And I need to remember how to do that. Luckily, I think I wrote a blog post about it. Let's look together. BurntToast. Oh, of course. So we'll go into buttons in a second, and for a moment there I thought I would have to create a button and then apply it to the content. Luckily, we don't. So, content. Launch. Let's launch the GitHub repo. Nice and easy. Did that? No. Pretty good. Right, so if we show our text now, our toast now, looks exactly the same as it did before, but if we click on it, it's going to load that URL we put in there. Now, that's all well and good showing a web page, but let's try, and I do mean try because I haven't ever done this on the latest version of Windows. Let's try getting some autocomplete going. Documents, GitHub, BurntToast, Media, BurntToast logo. Right, so if we run that and click it, you can see it's trying to load a picture. And because I don't have a default app set for that, it would ask me what one, but there we go. We've launched the picture. So what that's good for is, say, you've got, like in my use case, you've got a long running script. Let's say that script generates a log file or an HTML report when it's finished. You can get the path to that log file and assign it to your toast notification just before you show it. And then you show your toast. Not only are you letting yourself know that the script is finished, but you're giving yourself quick access to the output from it if you need it. So that's how I tend to use this thing. I'm sure there's plenty of other creative ways to do it. Or to use it, rather. So that's clicking on the toast itself. There's also buttons. So let's go ahead and get 2 buttons running. Button 1, and if you can't guess by now, the function name is new BT button. So, content is what displays on the button itself, and then much like when we created an action on the toast, we're going to need to supply a URL or a URI and the activation type. They're named slightly different here, so instead of launch, it is arguments. And the argument on this, we will go back to GitHub. And our activation type, the activation type does default to protocol, which is the one we need. But I like to put it in there anyway, because if it's not there, it doesn't, like, if for whatever reason the default doesn't apply, then this isn't going to work without it being set to protocol. Those other 2, background and foreground, would be for if you actually had a proper UWP app that was listening for events in your toast notifications. So say you had a chat app and you got a notification, you click on it, it would take you back into the app to that chat, possibly with that specific message highlighted or something to that effect. Unfortunately, PowerShell can't yet subscribe to those events. So these are here because they're valid, not because they're useful. Now, one button's a bit boring, so let's create a second one. Let's borrow that. Might as well grab the whole thing because it's all useful. And just to avoid confusion, I'm going to get rid of the launch on the toast itself. Now, buttons by themselves aren't useful. We need to wrap them into a action. So specify both of our buttons, and now we need to let our content know what our actions are. Action 1. So, nice big buttons. If we click GitHub, the toast dismisses, so you can only click one of the buttons, but it has taken us through to GitHub. Open the picture, we see the picture. And it does dismiss the toast, so it doesn't go and hide away in the action center. It's basically the thinking there is you've actioned the toast, you don't need to refer to it later. it can be a bit of a pain if you do want to go to the other button, but that's life, I guess. Now we're going to look at one more thing before I wrap up the stream, which is progress bars. Then we'll have another look at the XML, because it's going to have gotten quite a bit more interesting now that we've added a bunch of stuff. And progress bars are actually fairly cool. So for the ease of editing, I'm going to put a progress bar right up the top. So much like a progress bar in PowerShell, if I go back here and run start stream again, you see it's effectively got a title, an action. It's possible to put other things in there, like whether it's a generic term like running or like the status. There's a couple of levels to describing what's happening with a progress bar in a toast as well. So you've got a title. For the simplicity, we'll just label them we'll put the text as what they are so we can see what changes. So for our first one, let's just do an indeterminate progress bar, and we'll see what that means in a second, but it's nothing too difficult. Let's add that to the end of our children there. And cool, that's an app logo override, that's alright. So, indeterminate basically means we don't know how far along we are in the process, so we're just going to show the progress bar as doing a thing. It doesn't give you any indication of how far through the process it is. Nothing. As you can see, title up there, status down here. So for example, your title could be copying files, your status could be the specific file that it's copying at that point in time. One thing to note, if you do have a clickable toast, almost all of the toast is clickable except for your progress bar area. So you'll notice I'm clicking. I can't click right on the animation. And for some reason, whenever I see an animation, I'm drawn to it, and I try to click there, but it won't activate. So that's an indeterminate one. Let's look at providing a value. So a value is basically a percentage that is specified in terms of a decimal. So 0 is 0%, 1 is 100% complete, so 0.01 is 1%. If we show it like that though, PowerShell is going to automatically change it to 1%. If for some reason you want the text to be something else, say if this was 50% done, and PowerShell is showing 50%, say you wanted it to say halfway. And if that that would disappear, so halfway helps if everything is selected. You can see it basically puts display text over what PowerShell was putting there. You can also see the white line is now 50% there. If we went 80 or 8, it's the same thing. Now, because I've put display text there, it's still going to show halfway regardless of what's here, so maybe not the most useful. Yeah, I'm sure there's a use case for wanting that though. But that's what you'll have noticed there is we've changed the progress bar quite a lot. And now we have a lot of toast notifications. All the exact same, well, effectively the exact same thing, just with the progress bar having been changed slightly. That's not very user-friendly. So what we end up doing is we're going to provide on, I believe, content, no. Aha. When we submit our notification, we can give it a string that identifies it. So say for example this is our demo toast. We're going to start this at, let's start this at 1%. So we've got our 1%, we put it aside, it's sitting there. If all of a sudden we're up to 10%, keeping our unique identifier the same, we get the toast again, and hopefully that's something we can change in the past where we can just silently update it. But if we dismiss that or move it off to the action center, you'll notice the original toast has been replaced. Actually, yeah. So now if this all of a sudden jumps to 99%, and then very quickly goes to 100, notice it, instead of stacking up a second toast, it dismissed the first one instantly, showed the new one, and we've only got one toast in the action center. If we were to now, that one's still in there, change this unique identifier, we've now got two toasts, and that's because the unique identifier wasn't unique. So that's effectively a unique identifier is how you update an existing toast. At the moment, I believe, no, I haven't looked back at this since the full creators update came out, so things might have changed. It's meant to be possible to customize how it refreshes those toasts. One option is what we're seeing there, which is how it basically shows a new toast and it gets rid of the old one if the old one existed. It should be possible to not show the new toast every time, so it will just, if it's sitting here in your action center, it'll just silently update. So when you go back to check the action center, you'll see the latest information. that's probably something we'll look at in another live stream, seeing if we can wire that up. The other thing you might have noticed is the sequence number. That is, as you can see, a 64-bit unsigned integer. Basically, you can tell, say we're in that scenario where we can silently update toasts. And you've got a script that's constantly updating that toast notification with an updated progress bar. Windows isn't always the best about getting toasts out really quickly. And if you're hammering it with toasts, it has the potential to get confused. So if you give it a sequence number, so our first one is toast 1, and then we increment this. Every time we send a toast, that number goes up. If for whatever reason it's got 5 toasts sitting there with the same unique identifier that it hasn't yet displayed, it'll skip straight to the latest one and just display that. Obviously, that's if you're doing that sort of thing at the moment when you're getting a new notification every time they pop up, I don't think you'd be a very happy human, because that's going to be really annoying. But the sequence number's there if we need it. Right, and before we wrap up, let's have a look at how our content's doing now that things are looking a bit more interesting. There. Sorry, I'm just seeing if it's possible to get PowerShell to actually format this nicely. No. Alright. So let's just go with get the content. And we'll do the whole manual format thing again. That's a long one. So, this again is, at the end of the day, a toast notification is XML. So you're basically passing XML to a Windows API. The Windows API is interpreting it and displaying it to the user. So it is possible to manually write these XML documents it's also really easy to accidentally malform something and then not get the output that you're expecting. Hence, writing BurntToast and trying to simplify things a bit. Yeah, so that XML is looking a bit more full than it did before. So that was our first toast of the day. That's our second toast. So up here we literally were just showing, well, 2 lines of text and an image. Now 4 lines of text, a progress bar, which as you can see is actually a really simple construct. It's just taking 2 strings and a integer, well, not an integer, a double, I think. Now I'm interested to know what that actually is. It is a double. Then we're specifying audio, which we did up there, alright. And our 2 buttons. So I guess the takeaway is, if you're doing, well, if you want to use BurntToast, you've got 2 main options. You can either stick to new BurntToast notification, and what I've tried to do with that is make it as user-friendly as possible. So if all you're looking to do is get some information on a screen, you can use new BurntToast notification to do that. So you can do the basics, you can add text, so let's add text, you can add an app logo, which is that. You can customize the sound. Let's say SMS. So if you haven't noticed, what I'm doing at the moment is basically reconstructing this with one function. In fact, let's well, as much of it as I can, because some of it I won't be able to. Right, we've got sound. What else do we have? And actually, now that I've done that, this isn't going to work, is it? I hate backticks, but it'll do the trick. Actually, when did I expose button through there? That's interesting. I forgot that I'd done that. Alright, sorry, let's stick to what I was thinking about here, progress bar, which is that there. That is something I need to fix. Huh. Okay, so basically you can get a fairly, well, evidently you can get a really descriptive toast notification out just using new BurntToast notification. Specify your text, your images, app logo, sound. You can even get progress bars in there. Evidently you can add buttons as well, which I'm going to assume is just a case of creating the buttons and passing them in. But if you want even finer grained control, actually before I start going on, let's test that. Yep, so it works. If you want finer grained control, you can dive into from this function to the rest of them. To be honest, it's been a long time since I've had to actually dive down to this sort of a level. I've had two goals in mind for this function, which is get it to do what I need it to do and make it easy for other people to use, I hope. There are a bunch of examples on that function, and it looks like I could add some more. But there's definitely enough in there to get you started at any rate. Was there anything else that I needed to cover? Or is there any questions? I guess is a good thing to be asking. No, I don't think there was anything else I wanted to cover in this stream specifically. There was something lingering in the back of my mind that I thought I should bring up. It's gone now. If it's important, I'll probably write a blog post about it or something, but no. That's everything I wanted to show today. Yeah, so I hope this was useful. Yeah, and if anyone ever has any questions or problems... Oh, actually, now it comes back to me, because as soon as I mention problems, what you'll notice here is I've SMS... sorry, I've set my audio to the SMS sound. If I run all of that, we hear the SMS sound once. If I run this, actually, so I don't get an error message again. If I run this once, you'll hear that annoying sound of the SMS message going over and over and over and over again. I believe that means that within new BurntToast notification, loop is being turned on by default for the audio. So if I specify loop now, down here, we should get the same experience. So I will add that to my OneNote of things to look at. Cool. Alright, so that's me for today. If you do have any questions, if you got any questions, problems, feature requests, anything like that, I'd encourage you to jump over to the when it wants to load for me to the BurntToast GitHub repo, which I'll try linking in the YouTube chat, but for some reason YouTube kills my links and they tend to go to 404s. Why? So I just clicked that. That to me, exactly the same URL. I open it via YouTube, 404. Anyway, it's github.com/windows/BurntToast. It's in the video description. Head over there, file an issue. I need to reply to that one. File an issue if you've got a bug or a question or a feature request. My next stream on BurntToast is likely going to be starting work on the next version of BurntToast, which will address some of these issues that have cropped up. We also really need to figure out this app ID situation. So you'll see all of these are grayed out. If I were to change my app ID to, say, Xbox or Maps, those would be nice and vibrant and easily visible. So we need to figure out that, which is going to be a real pain. But hopefully with a couple of minds looking at it on stream, it won't be too bad. I don't know when my next stream will be yet, but keep an eye out on Twitter or on my YouTube page and I'll have it scheduled. I will tweet out the time when I know. Yeah, so again, any questions, comments, issues, requests, fire them through. Feel free to reach out on Twitter. Leave a comment on this video. Basically, if you comment, I'll find it. Awesome. So thanks for tuning in today. Hope it was useful. And I'll see you next time. Have a good one.